Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek Program at the Raulston Arboretum. Today, we are going deeper in the garden. We've got Tim Alderton, our research technician. He's going to talk to us about Acer, the genus of Acer. It's a great genus. Who doesn't love maples? Obviously, maples can be pretty overused, and we want to avoid the maples that are overused in this topic today. We want to go into all the obscure maples, all the weird maples that we have planted around the garden. And Tim's got some, well, not specimens, but he's collected samples from some of the trees out in our garden, and he's going to talk to you all about them and all about maples generally. Okay, and with announcements out of the way, I'd like to pass things over to Tim so he can talk to us about maples.
Hello, everybody. Today, yes, like Blake was saying, we're going to talk about some maples. And this is actually an overwhelming one for me. I'm not as studied on these as I should be, but the reason we're talking about this one is because Alexander, our cameraman for today, his wife, Carol, suggested that we do this and talk about some exceptions to, that is, some alternatives to, say, Acer palmatum, the most common of the Japanese maples, and also Acer rubrum, which I call red maple, though it's also swamp maple, various other names for it, which is a native here in the eastern United States. And we have quite a few different maples in the garden, and I just have cut some samples of a whole bunch of different ones here. It's not by any means anywhere close to the selection that we do have in the garden, but these are some that I find that might be good substitutes, like I said, and some that are just downright cool and you don't think of using as much. So we'll get started. And when Acer as a genus is made up of, depending what reference you look at, I saw things saying anywhere from 124 to about 200 different species. Some people like to lump and some people like to split. So probably some of these are actually subspecies, and it's like, so anyway, so there's so much variation there. They're also in, Acer used to, when I learned it, about 20 some years ago anyways, we were saying that it was in its own family, the Acer Acer. Today they have lumped it into a much larger family now. And when it was an Acer Acer, it was only 2 genera in that family. And then they've lumped it into this other family, the Sapondaceae. So that's I think the soapberry family, more or less, which we do have a couple of those in the garden. But there's a bunch of other things in that family. And the other, they've split it up into subfamilies. And so even there's differences on the opinion on what subfamily it should be in. Is it in its own subfamily, the Aceroideae? Or is it in the Hippocastanoideae, which is where your horse chestnuts are, your Aesculus. But either way, it's not in a big subfamily. If it's again in the Aceroideae, you only have two genera in that. You have Acer and Dipteronia, which is probably the most closely related other genera to the maples of Acer. And then if you include it in the Hippocastanoideae, you get Aesculus, which again, the horse chestnuts, a genus, 2 other genera that I've never heard of. Billa, B-I-L-L-A, which is only 2 species found in Mexico, central Mexico down into Ecuador. And then a monotypic species from China, which is, let's see if I can spit this one out. Handeliodendron. It's either way, it's in a small subfamily or subset of a much larger group of plants. And again, there's it's just who you ask as to what authority you refer to as to where it's being placed. So, but what I can tell you is there's other things that about maples that are a little bit in flux. They don't know where they originated originally. They have some ideas again. One of them is that they originated in Western North America. While today there's just a couple species out in Western North America, they believe that it may have crossed across one of the land bridges, more or less, into Asia from Western North America, and that's based on the fact that they have found fossils that date back to the Paleocene, which I had to look that up. I don't often get deep into time, but the Paleocene apparently was from 66 to 56 million years ago. So just a short little bit of time there. And they found the oldest fossils here in North America, actually in Alaska of all places. I'm thinking there's probably only 1 or 2 species today of maple in Alaska. And the one I can think of right off, or 2 I could think of that are probably there, I didn't look up to see, darn, I'm just blanked out. Macrophylla, Acer macrophylla, which is a really cool maple in the northwestern United States. If you ever see them, great big leaves, as its name says, macrophylla. Killed them here in the garden. They don't like our summers here. And another one, which is borderline for us here. It'll survive for a while, especially if it's grafted onto its cousin, the Acer palmatum, for instance, which are Japanese maples, is Acer circinatum, which is the vine maple. I know those two are probably come up into southern Alaska today, but and then we have more species here in the eastern United States than there are in the west. They tend to like a moister climate. And what do we think of the western United States as today? It's rather dry. The climate has changed over, just the last couple million years. The 66 to 56 million years, it's changed a little bit. So sometime they think they jumped over into East Asia, and possibly they also think, I'll get onto it. Anyways, and then spread from there into throughout Southeast Asia and into Europe, where the range is actually pretty much the northern hemisphere, North America, Europe, and Asia. But and almost all species but one actually occur north of the equator. There's one species in Southeast Asia that ventures across the equator, and I think down into Indonesia, where it just barely touches one. So anyways, back to a little bit of the history. So the oldest fossils in Asia are actually not that long ago, only 23 to 25 million years. And in Europe, they've even found older ones than they found in Asia. And 38 to 34 million year old fossils of that. So, but here in the eastern United States, there's the possibility that the maples may have come over from Europe. And because actually, some of the maple sections, which actually occur in Europe as well as here in the eastern United States, the same subsection of maples. So it's kind of interesting to realize that. But today, the most diverse area of maples, or the highest diversity of maples, is in Southeast Asia, in particular China, which China has everything, and more or less. So getting all that behind, I am going to talk a little bit about some. That's the really digging deeper part. But we'll talk about some things that are alternatives now to Japanese maple, that is Acer palmatum. I'm only doing palmatum because there's a whole group of maples that are commonly called Japanese maples, and they are far less used than palmatum in our landscapes today. And then we'll get into some of the other groups of maples. So I think I'm touching on like 4 or 5 of the sections within Acer, and I didn't count, but I think there were probably 8 to 12 different sections within maple, and then they subdivide that further, and I didn't go that low. I just kept it at the section level. But so I'm going to start off with that one section, which includes the Acer palmatums, and that's section palmata. Hence palmatum, palmata, so hand. And anyways, I have a selection of some of them actually right in front of me now. And some of them are going to be quite familiar. And one of my favorites is this one here. Let's see if we can get this out here. This is one of many selections of Acer japonicum, so hence Japanese maple. And this is, I didn't look to see which one this is. I think this is Acer japonicum aconitifolium, if I'm not wrong. I could be. But there's quite a few of these that are grown here in the eastern United States, but they really do well in the West. But I like these. They're not as dense as a Acer palmatum to me. They have a much more graceful look. It's more contorted often. The leaves are much bigger. They're sparser. I don't know. They're really spaced out. You can see these maybe. In this case, this is a really deeply cut one. Some of them are not quite so deeply cut, and they look more rounded, and they'll look similar to another species I'll show you here in a few minutes. But I really find these more special than that of the palmatums that we have so ubiquitously throughout our garden in reality here at the Arboretum. And you were seeing on that intro shot that Alexander had set up for us, highlighting the Acer palmatum red pygmy that was just above us. But I really find this species good, or cool. It's actually, for us here, it might be getting on the warm side to be growing this species though. So this is one, if for those here in North Carolina who have a place in the mountains, this would be a great one to grow. Acer palmatum likes it actually between, I think, zone 4 and 7. And so we're getting on the upper side of that 7. We're almost into zone 8 here. So it's starting to say I'm getting a little bit warm. So for those of you further north, where I'm from in Pennsylvania, this is probably a great species to try. Or actually it's 5 to 7, but anyways, I do like this one. The typical species of this can get anywhere from up to 20 to 30 feet, but most of the selections stay much smaller than that. And on this selection here, again, I'm looking at it right here very closely. There's beautiful red petioles on this, and just because of the venation of this, it's so different than the Acer palmatum, most of the Acer palmatums that we grow in. That's just one I wanted to highlight. So next one, let's see here. Okay, I was saying about one that is kind of similar to Acer japonicum, and that's this one here. This is Acer shirasawanum. I can spit that out, the full moon maple. And this is a selection, actually. This is, or another selection. This is Acer Munn 001. It's a really catchy name. It's actually a patented one, and it has a trade name. It's something moon. It's hard enough to remember the real names, but I like to go the real name if I can. But anyways, wonderful pale green mature foliage, but the new growth has just a soft rosy blush to it, and then again as it ages it does turn to just a really fresh green. The leaf shape on this is a much more delicate, smaller growing maple. But the habit is probably very close to that of the japonica that we just saw. And if other forms of japonica may have a leaf that's much like this and having the not so deep lobing to the leaf, and that's what the wild type would probably be like on the japonicum. And I've seen some of those more in the western United States, that is at around Seattle and stuff, and they're beautiful. And we can grow them here too as well. But like I said, they're starting to say it's getting a little bit warm. Again, this one's a little bit hardier, and it doesn't want to go too much further south, but it does just fine for us here. It's a little bit less of an issue than japonicum for saying it's getting too hot. So, but Acer shirasawanum is another one of those good substitutes for an Acer palmatum. And let's see, I have to think what I have here now. I did not put labels on these, so this is a test of my memory. This is one that I've really been impressed with, that we have actually just over here in the Asian Valley, that I think we may have grown from seed. I didn't look. This is Acer pseudosieboldianum takesimense, if I remember. I want to make sure on that. Takesimense, yes, I got it right. So this Acer pseudosieboldianum is another cousin of the Japanese maple, but it's actually found on the mainland of takesimense variety. Takesimense is found in the mainland of, or subspecies is found in the mainland of Korea and China. And then this specific subspecies, takesimense, is only found on Oolong Island off the coast of Korea. And it has been really good for us here. We've had other plants in the garden from this same island, and they're always have been excellent for us. There's some ferns and things that we can't grow otherwise, but we can grow them if they're from that island. But anyways, The fall foliage on this is spectacular. As it's good on these other maples I have shown you have shown you already, but this is one that I'm blown away with each fall when it does color up in November or early December for us. It just glows here in the Asian Valley. But it has a little bit larger leaf than, say, the circinatum, and has a little bit different serration on it. But this is a great one to try if you can get a hold of it. So Acer pseudosieboldianum takesimense. So let's see here. So now this is another one, a little more heat tolerant. So since I said we are getting a little bit warmer, our weather's going to the warm side. This is another close relative of the Japanese maple, or Acer palmatum. This is Acer oliverianum. And let's see, I'm going to check to see where I have that one from. I think it's southern and central. Or central China and Taiwan. So if it's from Taiwan, it has a little more heat tolerance to it. And this is rated only zone 7 to 9. So that's going down into Florida as growing happily. So your typical palmatums are saying, I can't stand the heat down there even. So as are some of those other species I've shown you a few minutes before. But it gets really good fall color. It's going to be a 25 to 30 foot tall tree probably for you. And so it's just a great one for its heat tolerance. And we're going to have to really start worrying about heat tolerance here in the future. So this is a better one to be using as an alternative tree for that Japanese maple look, or Acer palmatum look. There are getting to be a few selections of this, and this is one of them, and I can't even remember what it is, but it's actually about 50 feet from where I'm standing right now. But I just wanted to highlight the species more than the cultivar. But again, wonderful fall foliage, and it's more heat tolerant. So now we're getting to a couple of the ones I find that are fun. And these are also in that same section palmata. And I'm hoping this, it might not, I wore the wrong shirt. Oh, it stands out? Okay. It doesn't flip over. This is what you might be saying, that's a maple? And the other thing is, now our maples, maples can be evergreen or deciduous. It just depends on the species. There's not that many evergreen ones, especially for us here. But this is Acer fabri. And this is, as long as I've been working here, this plant has been one of my favorite, truly one of my favorite plants, in the maples in particular. And it is evergreen. And I've only seen it go deciduous to semi-deciduous once or twice in my 17 years here at the Arboretum. And that's only when we've had really nasty weather. Single digits, it'll go. I don't think it had any issues when we had 9 in December. It may have lost a few of its leaves, but it flushed right back out. And it's always an early grower. It will start growing and start flowering as early as late February and into early March. And I don't know if you can see it right now, but it is in full seed right now. And the seeds on this one are just spectacular. They are red against a fresh green growth. And the leaf, you might say, oh, that's not, it looks more like a willow. And yeah, it does. But this is a maple. And the new growth, when it's actually pushing first thing in the spring, is red as well, much like the samaras on this, the seeds on here. So it is beautiful when it's just flushing. And then you get this fresh greeny, Smith apple green growth with the red samaras against it. And the tree is small growing, and I'd say about a 15 to 25 feet is probably our good range for us here in this part of North Carolina. I recommend probably giving it a little bit of protection. If it can get a little bit of overstory, especially when it's young and getting established, they can get burnt if we do have a hard winter. We have another selection that is actually, I think, Mark Wild collected, and they haven't, it's one planted in the open, and it tends to get burnt. And it got burnt this winter, and it got burnt last winter, that is the previous winter, but it has recovered and it is starting to grow. But this is one that's been in the garden. I didn't look at the dates, but this was about a 10 or 12 foot tall tree when I started here 17 years ago. So it has done very well. When it was young, though, it was underneath some enormous American hollies that we had in the garden at the time. So it was able to establish before it got any nasty weather. But again, 9 out of 10 years, this is fully evergreen for us, and just a great tree. It's not as open as a Japanese maple, but it is in that same, like I said, that same section as the Japanese maples, and it's just truly one of my favorite maples in the garden. And then a cousin of that is this one here, and this is one Mark made a selection of. He got seed, brought seed back from, I think this was from China. I don't think this was from Taiwan. It's not native to Taiwan, so I'm going to say China. This is Acer levigatum. In this selection, we've given the name Hong Long, and we've had several other seedlings planted in the garden. They have all died or had major winter damage. Hong Long, actually, I started in the lath house, and it has not had any real major damage to it. It does go more or less winter deciduous for us, though it can be an evergreen. It'll get pretty tattered if it's on the leaves that do survive. But when this one flushes, I can't describe it. I'm terrible at describing this. It has this burgundy look. To me, I describe it as almost a metallic look. I don't know. It's strange on the new growth. I don't know if we can see the color of the stems and the veins on it. The whole leaf will be that when it first flushes in the spring. And our original plant now of Hong Long is about 12 to 15 feet tall, and it's probably 70 feet from me here in the Asian Valley. And I have it in a place where it gets a good winter canopy, just to give it a little bit extra blanket on those cold nights where we do get down there. But it's been through it's been through about 3 degrees in 2018, and aside from going deciduous, it has fared quite well for us there. But this one, just the new growth on this one is enough to grow it. So that's another one there. So let's see. So that finishes up what I have for my Acer palmata section. And we're gonna go into another section, and I'm gonna look at my notes here. I have it on here. Okay, we're gonna go over here, and I'm gonna pull one of these out. And this is gonna highlight one that's actually right behind me. So this is Acer caudatifolium, which this is actually from Taiwan. Sometimes you'll see it as Acer kawakamii. We've been growing, actually, this branch came from one right outside the McSwain Center, which I planted in July 2nd or 3rd of 2006. I'm terrible, I can remember crazy things like that. But anyways, it was about 3 feet tall. It's now about 20, 25 feet. It's it's higher than our roof. Very fast growing. It used to grow 2 or 3 feet, and it would get damaged because it didn't want to shut down in the because of the lights we had at the McSwain Center. It wouldn't shut down in the fall, and it would get damaged. It doesn't do that anymore. It would die back another foot. So it grows 3 and cut back a foot, but still you had 2 feet. So it's outgrown all that now, and it's just a really nice tree. What I like about this is in a group of maples that includes what we call the striped maples, and not all of them do very well for us. There's a bunch of them that are better much further north, and I think our tree over at the McSwain Center has better bark, but right behind me, if I shuffle to the side, I'm hoping that Alexander can get the bark over here. I think you can see some of the striping that's on this. This one has turned more gray, though I think the one at the McSwain has kept a more green with striping on it, on a little bit longer than on this one. But this is one Mark collected in Taiwan specifically, while the one we have that this branch is from is one that we grew from seed, actually, that we got from the Taiwan Forestry Institute way back in, I think, 2003. If I remember correctly. But I really do like this maple just because it allows us to grow a group of maples reasonably well, and it's where many of its other relatives have not done well for us. And this is one from the section, I should have said, since I've been talking about the sections, is Macrantha, which it's one of the smaller sections. But anyways, That's why I wanted to highlight that one, though. The new branches on this one stay green for quite some time, and then they get those stripes down the bark, and then they finally do turn a gray tone. But I really do like that maple as well. So, back to this jar right here. This is one that we have several forms of it in the garden. This is from the section Acer pentaphylla, which there's actually one of the rarest species of Acer is, I think, Acer pentaphylla, and I can't get that one to grow here. I killed it a couple times, but this one is readily available actually. This is Acer bergerianum, and there's a whole bunch of different selections of Acer bergerianum. Some of them are dwarf and can be used much like you would use that of some of the more compact Japanese maples, as an understory or as a really focal point in a landscape. Others, like this one, which is truly my favorite that we have right now, is, and it's a relatively new selection, is Acer bergerianum Michael Steinhardt. It was named by Dawn Shadows of Shadows Nursery in Tennessee, and I can't remember who Michael is. I should have took note of that, but I didn't write that down. But it's a full-size Acer bergerianum, which Acer bergerianum gets 25 to 30 feet tall easily. We have had them in the garden for years. They might get a little bit taller than that in reality, maybe up to 40 feet, but this is bright yellow with a little bit of blush on the new growth, and it stays fresh looking all summer long, and it's just been impressing me in our mixed border probably for about the last, I'm going to say 6 or 8 years anyways. Our specimen is now up to, I'm going to say, about 15 to 18 feet tall. So, but it's just a solid, fresh yellow, green, and beautiful all summer long. I have not been getting many seedlings of this one yet, thank goodness, but that is one issue I do have with Acer bergerianum. They tend, at least the standard species, like to self-sow, and Blake was telling me he's been really appreciating that because we have a subspecies out in an old part of the garden, and there's literally a lawn of Acer bergerianum seedlings underneath it. So I do worry about this one possibly being a little bit weedy if it were in the right situation. We have really good spots in the garden, so our soil is excellent where it's at. It's in, like I said, one of the older parts, so it has really good, nice formed soil on it. I could see this being used as a great street tree. The standard species, as well as this selection here, Michael Steinhardt. Some of the other bizarre ones that we have, and I'll get them out here. This is actually one of the smaller growing ones. This is one that we have near the visitor center, and it's kind of getting shaded out at this point, but it is still there and has been there way longer than me. This is Acer bergerianum Minoyatsubusa. I think, if I remember that correctly, let me make sure. Yes, Acer bergerianum Mino, M-I-N-O, Yatsubusa. I can't spit it out. My mouth's getting a little bit dry out here in the heat. But it has almost a thread-like leaf. It doesn't have the typical maple type leaf like Acer bergerianum Michael Steinhardt right there. So another one here, it's kind of really cool, and I have not seen seedlings on this, and this is a full-size selection. This is Acer bergerianum Naruto. Which has a funky twisted leaf. You think it's drying out, but no, it's just the way it has it. Its leaf curls up on itself. And it just gives a totally different look in the landscape. Our plant is probably 30 feet tall anyways, and it's been that big as long as I've been working here. And like I said, I haven't seen seedlings everywhere underneath this one like I have on just the straight species. So I'm thinking the varieties or the cultivars are a little bit better habit than that of the straight species. But this would make a fine street tree, actually, except for it has a relatively low branching habit, and it wants to go, it has kind of like elbows, and they're not too far from the ground. But in a yard, it's not that bad. the species in general, I don't think has great fall color though. I will say that, but and I'm a northerner and grew up with really good fall color, so I'm really critical. Down here, you guys might think it's perfectly fine, but anyways, that is Acer verdurianum Naruto. And then this is a funky one. This is one, actually Mark collected this form, I believe, if I remember correctly. This is Acer verdurianum formosanum. So this one has a funky leaf. It's much more rounded and lobed, but it's the same species. And the other funky thing about this one is, being it's from Taiwan, it comes from the subtropics, it can be semi-evergreen. It hasn't been for us, more or less, but if you get a little bit further south, maybe down around Atlanta or the coast, it may hold on to its leaves and look fairly decent throughout the winter and be a semi-evergreen. Florida, it would probably be evergreen. But it has a super glossy finish to this one. And the leaf is a little thicker, less papery texture. Again, because it does have that more evergreen tendency to it. But just another one to look out for and an interesting one. And you can really see the samaras on this one here. And that's only about 30 feet from me right now. So now we're going to get into another group of maples, and this is one I'm somewhat familiar with, this group, because I grew up with another species, which where I'm from in Pennsylvania is a little bit problematic in itself, sows everywhere. This is a plant in the section Platanoideae, Platanoidea, Platanoidea, and so that one includes Acer platanoides, which is the Norway maple. In Pennsylvania and several of the northeast states, Acer platanoides can be a little bit of a thug, and it has naturalized. It can be a little bit of a weed. It's not down here. They often die down here after a few years. And the one that I would see back home was one called Crimson King, which I've seen so many of those die here in North Carolina, in Raleigh. We used to have one here on the property as well. But this is a different species. This is a cousin of it. This is Acer truncatum. And beautiful glossy leaves. It looks a lot like our favorite native tree, the liquid amber strassifluid or sweet gum or gumball tree that everybody loves to have in their yard and trample on their fruit, or make Christmas decorations out of, whichever way you look at it. This kind of looks like that, at least in leaf, and it does get good color, but not the same as that. But it could be a wonderful alternative to that. And it's the species only ranges to about, I have to look this up here, up to 50 feet, which is a little bit smaller than that of a Norway maple if you're from up north. But this is one that'll grow for you. This is not from Norway. It's not a European species, but this section of maple is mainly in Europe and in Asia. And another close relative of this is Acer mono or pictum, which is synonymous to mono from what I was saying. I was saying earlier about there's so much divergence on some of the naming of some of these maples, and what makes it a little bit difficult. But anyways, so this is one I think would actually make a good street tree for us here, an alternative. This is off of a specimen we have up right in front of our lath house, and it has grown very vigorously since I planted it there in 2012, if I remember correctly. Either that or it was spring of 2013, one or the other. It's now about 30 feet tall, and it was not that big when it was planted. But really nice foliage. It can be limbed up to be able to walk under it like you would a red maple. Acer rubrum. So that was the other thing. This one would be a good replacement for that in the landscape. These are known to not have some of the issues. Red maple, which I haven't talked about much, but we were saying alternatives to red maple, and we're getting into those now. One of its issues here, at least in the southeast, is becoming an issue with gloomy scale, which is really bad, especially they really prosper when it's in a warm site, along the street, along a sidewalk, along concrete, which is where it seems we always want to be trying to grow Acer rubrum, their red maple. It does not like that. It wants to be set back in a lawn with lots of space around it, so it doesn't get these heat islands around it, where the scales just love that warm weather. They want to be a little bit cooler. So the gloomy scale is becoming a big issue on our Acer rubrums. And the way we are using them in our landscapes. This, I think, would not have that much of an issue with that. It's a bit more tolerant to that, and I haven't seen any scale on this, but we have actually gloomy scale in our parking lot on our red maples, and Freeman maples, which are a cross between silver maple and red maple. And we have them used in the wrong spot, of course, and that's part of it. So homeowners and planters are not the only ones who have made the wrong decision there. So if you want to see gloomy scale, you can go to our parking lot. But this should not have that same issue. So Acer truncatum, a good alternative to Acer rubrum. And okay, so we're getting to some other ones here, and we're all getting close actually to the end. This is a funky one, and I only included it. Now we're into section Acer. Acer section Acer. So yes, isn't that fun? And this is one I wasn't going to talk about, but Blake put it in the description, so I thought maybe I'd mention it. And I would not have guessed this is related to the ones I'm familiar with that are also in this. So this is a European maple. This is actually found from Greece and Turkey. This is Acer sempervirens. So sempervirens, always alive, evergreen. It's another evergreen maple, but it's from the Mediterranean. It actually likes it hot and dry, and it's a bit shrubby. We have one in the garden. I don't have it in a hot, sunny, dry spot. I have it in a dry spot, but not in a sunny, dry spot. It does want to reach out because the trees have grown since I planted it around it. It's not going to be the tree that you're going to have for shade in your landscape. They get about 20 feet tall, but they're native to hillsides, rocky hillsides in, like I said, Greece and Turkey. It's native to, or its common name is Cretan or a maple, so from Crete. For us, it has been tardily deciduous. If it stays evergreen, the leaves that stay look really tattered by the spring. But I just wanted to mention that one. But this is a European member of this. And then we're getting into, I said about earlier that they think some of the maples may have jumped the Atlantic at times whenever there's been times that we've been connected over the last 66 million years or so, and have come in to the eastern North America via Europe, and the maples in Asia and Europe got there via jumping over the land bridge from the western North America. So, it's kind of ironic. Anyways, so this I did not realize would be related to this. These are some of our, we have sugar maples here in the east, which me coming again from the north, I don't like seeing clonal sugar maples, but anyways, I like to see a tapestry of red and sugar maples seedlings. But anyways, they aren't always as happy down here as they are further north. And we do have one, or actually there's a couple small species of sugar maple that aren't Acer saccharum, but there's some other species. I think it's Acer barbatus maybe. And then this one here, this is Acer leucodermi. Yes, leucodermi. So this is the chalk maple, which grows as an understory here in the southeast. Here in Raleigh even, you can find this species. And we don't have the straight species in the garden, but we have this funky little one. This is one, it's probably difficult to see it right now, but in a few weeks it'll become a little bit more apparent. It has a gray-green variegation, and then you have green, or actually it's gray-green on the body of the leaf, and the veins are dark green. it has a variegated appearance. This is one called Confederate Ghost, and it'll get paler here in the next few weeks. It's and more apparent on the venation on this one, but it's really a cool species. Just the straight species can give you some really nice color in our falls here if you have it growing in your woods, or you might incorporate it into your landscape if you can find just straight leucodermy. But if not, you might find this strange cultivar, which is sometimes available, Confederate Ghost. And it's like a 15 to 20 foot tall tree. So again, much like you would, you could use it much like you would a Japanese maple, Acer palmatum in your landscape. Maybe not the red maple that you have in the front yard. But this next one might be for a good one for that. And this is the Mexican sugar maple, which is endemic to southern Mexico, a few locations in cloud forest in southern Mexico and Guatemala. It's like half a dozen locations that has been found. This is Acer scuccii, and this is, like I said, a sugar maple, and it has done very well for us. This is a branch off of one we have in our xeric garden, and when we planted it, probably I'm going to say, I didn't look at the record, but I'm going to guess it was probably planted in about 2008 or 2009. It was probably only 2 or 3 feet tall. Today it's about 35 to 40 feet tall. Really nice specimen. And it gives you the look of a sugar maple, maybe not quite as vibrant color, but it does color up for us here. And again, further south, and probably in Florida and in southern Texas, this is actually a semi-evergreen species. Further north, it's actually deciduous and colors up, but in the south, deep south, you get an evergreen tree. And this one could be used as a great alternative to the red maple, Acer rubrum. It has that heat tolerance, and it'll take our winters here and give you some color in your landscape as well in the fall that we grow so many maples for. We have one selection here, and I'm not sure if we have the original plant of this, or if this I can't remember if it came in as a seedling, or if this from Highland Creek Nursery, which is now closed, but or if this came in as a grafted plant, but I haven't looked at our original, or our plant up here. This is Acer scuccii, and it's Tequila Sunrise. And it's been much more compact. Our plant now, I think we got it in, let's see, I have to think back. I think this was 2009 accession. I think I wrote it down, didn't I? Take that back, 2013 accession. So we haven't had it that long, but it's only about 8 or 10 feet tall. But it flushes in the spring and it's pink. And then it transitions to a paler yellowy green, which gives it a really cool look. So this would rival any of the Japanese maples for those funky colors you get in the spring. And again, this is going to take our summer heat. Ours gets pretty much full sun where it's at, and it does get a little burn now and again. But this, I think, is actually from the last cold spell we had. So it leaves out early enough that we can get a little bit of a frost damage on it. So that's the last of my alternatives that you might want to try to Acer rubrum or Acer palmatum. Do we have any questions?
We have some.
I'm going to get myself a swallow of water while you start to.
For sure. And y'all are welcome to ask any questions if you have any. But so one was, did you say if Acer truncatum gets good fall color?
It gets a decent fall color, yeah.
Okay.
It's not a northern maple like I would for me growing up, but for down here, people should like it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, there was one other question that somebody asked how big Acer fabry gets, but you literally answered that question.
I think for us, it's about 25 feet. It's probably where it's going to max out. But let me see. Well, it's like I was looking, 25 to 30 feet is the range. So yeah.
Well, literally the moment that question was asked, you answered the question during your presentation without being asked the question anyway. So.
Our plant is, I'm going to say our plant's probably about 25 feet now. And most of the information for that one comes out of Florida, but we've had it here for years. And I had to laugh that they said the Samara's colored up in September. Is it September already? But so I don't know if it just flowers later down there because it doesn't get the chill that it gets here. But anyways, you know, you find stuff online. But
Okay. Do you know of any sources of maples, particularly ones that grow well in Zone 9A?
is not offhand.
Okay.
You might try Mr. Maples.
Yeah.
They have a wide selection. I have not actually looked at their website, even though I know Matt and Tim. They have literally thousands of maples, not just Japanese maples. They have other funky species. They may be one to search out. And are they? Do we know where they're at? Are they in Florida or the coastal? The Gulf Coast region? I'm wondering. But look at your local nurseries if you're in that range. See if they can find some. This was
Charleston,
listed
they
on
say.
Charleston.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might try woodlanders. They may have Acer fabri, for instance.
Ooh.
And oliverianum, I think we got probably from Mr. Maple. So that's a zone 7 to 9 species. So that would be a good one to try in Charleston.
Great. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that are in the chat, and I think that's a testament to how thoroughly you covered all of those plants, that there just aren't any questions to be asked.
I don't know about that. I got lots of questions from myself. No,
Wow.
As I was looking at this up last night.
Yeah,
so.
and I'll just point out to all of you watching at home, remember Tim said this was a genus that he's not super familiar with. And
I mean, I'm familiar with Acer, but not digging. I hadn't dug that deep into Acer.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful that you took this deep dive. I learned an absurd amount about maples. I'm sure
there's so much more
did.
online. There's. I was reading papers last night, and it's like, oh, I can't get that deep.
No kidding. So, thank you so much, Tim, for pulling this together. You did a phenomenal
You're welcome.
job.
Now I have to go back to pulling plants for plant sale.
Great. Well, I hope you enjoy that. And thank you all for joining us today for this midweek program. I hope you'll come back next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, where we'll be having a garden conversation with Joe Neal, who is a weed scientist at NC State University. Sophia's going to sit down with him and talk about weeds. I know we're all thinking about murdering weeds right now in our own garden, so that'll be a fun and pertinent discussion. So I hope you all will join us for that. We'll see you then. Take care.